Tarek was never one for superstition, but the old house his uncle left him in inheritance had a silence that felt conscious. The first night was uneventful. Dust-covered furniture, cracked wallpaper, and a light bulb that flickered slightly, nothing out of the ordinary for a house untouched for nearly a decade. Tarek settled in with a small suitcase, thinking he'd only stay a few nights before listing the property for sale. The strangeness began the next evening. He was in the study, an old room filled with moth-eaten books and a broken clock that always read 3:17. He sat in the leather chair, flipping through a journal left behind by his uncle. That's when he blinked. Just once. When his eyes opened again, the lamp had shifted to the other side of the room. The books on the shelf had reorganized themselves. And the broken clock? Now it ticked slowly but backward. Tarek stood up sharply, heart-thudding. I must be tired, he whispered to himself. Sleep deprivation. That was logical. But logic began to crumble quickly. Over the next few hours, every blink brought change. Sometimes minor, a chair moved, curtains drawn. Other times, terrifying. A dark figure would be standing in the corner, silent, gone in the next blink. Wallpaper patterns shifted into what looked like faces screaming in agony. Once, a blood-red stain appeared on the ceiling, pulsing like a heartbeat, only to vanish seconds later. Tarek tried to film it. He set up his phone, started recording, and began blinking deliberately. But the footage showed nothing unusual. Only him, staring, blinking like a madman in a normal room. On the third night, the room started speaking. Not with voices, but through the environment. On the wall, in smeared charcoal, a single line appeared, "You shouldn't have come." Tarek blinked and it was gone. Then on the mirror, "He still lives here." Blink. Clean again. He tried to leave. Ran to the front door, only to find brick walls where the entrance had been. Blink. Now a hallway stretched endlessly, lined with dozens of identical doors. All locked. Tarek picked one at random and entered. It was the study again. But it wasn't. Now, the books were in languages he didn't recognize, pages filled with diagrams of human anatomy drawn with too much enthusiasm. The journal was gone, replaced by a dusty photo album. He opened it. Each photo was of him. Sleeping. Eating. Standing. All taken from slightly different angles, as if someone or something had been watching him constantly. In every photo, behind him, always at the very edge of the frame, was a tall, featureless figure, pale and eyeless. He slammed the album shut and blinked. Now the room was filled with whispers. Low, incomprehensible sounds like hundreds of voices speaking underwater. He pressed his hands against his ears. Stop, he yelled. But the voices grew louder. Screaming now. Laughing. Chanting a name he couldn't understand. In the corner of the room, the shadows moved. The figure was back. Only now it was closer. He blinked. It vanished. He blinked again. Now it stood inches from his face. He screamed, falling backward over the chair. Crawled away, trembling. What do you want from me? The figure tilted its head. Slowly, it raised a bony hand and pointed toward Tarek's eyes. Stop blinking, a voice hissed inside his skull. He tried. Forced his eyes wide, tears burning down his cheeks as he resisted the natural urge to blink. Minutes passed. Then hours. The room stopped changing. The figure disappeared. It seemed he was safe as long as his eyes remained open. But humans aren't built like that. Eventually, exhaustion won. He blinked. And everything turned black. When he awoke, he was no longer in the study. He was inside a box. Claustrophobic, wooden, with no doors or windows. He began screaming, pounding on the walls. His fists bled. On the inner surface of the lid above him, words appeared, carved in splinters. You live here now. The final blink came involuntarily. One last desperate flutter of his bruised eyelids. When they opened again, he was gone. The house was empty. Except, of course, for the next visitor who arrived a week later holding the same letter Tarek once held. A will. An inheritance. An old house. And in the study, the broken clock began ticking again backward.